Some of you have been asking me a lot of questions about how to paint black fur specifically, so I want to touch on that subject a little bit. Obviously this is a black and white dog, and the colors I've used here are basically ultramarine blue, and you can see some of those blues right in here, and lamp black. You can get a little bit more sophisticated by using a combination of like burnt sienna and ultramarine, or a combination of other colors, but for this particular painting I'm keeping it kind of simple and using an actual black. Some painters will tell you don't use black because that gets too flat, but I think as long as you put in some other colors, for the most part you're going to be fine. What I like to do when I do paint with black though is start with an underlayer of a certain color that is not black, and it usually depends on what colors are in the actual reference photo. For this actual one there's a lot of blues because this dog is sitting in the sun. So this section right here that I'm painting is gonna be mostly black eventually, but it's gonna start out with a blue undercolor for me. Maybe put in a little bit of yellows over here where the sun's hitting him a little bit more. So that's that. Then while this is still wet, I'm gonna load up my brush with some black, fairly thick because this is a wet area. So I need a lot of paint on my brush. In order to have enough black to show through when I paint it. So, and that keeps it nice and loose, of course. We're still kind of in the loose stage. There's some fur right here, so I'm just gonna make that edge a little jagged to denote some fur right there. And then now this area is dry, but this is a good time to go in here and put in a little bit of detail, put in some fur details. Just to give this area some definition. Get some more paint on my brush. And this edge is pretty much a straight edge, so I want to denote some fur here. I'm using my brush that has those bristles on it. My fur brush. There's lots of soft edges on this painting right now, and now I'm at the stage with the fur now that I can go in and put in some harder edges. You just don't want to overdo the hard edges, but you do want enough hard edges in there to give your painting some definition. So I'm just going in with pure black. I have pure black right here on my brush. Be very careful to keep looking at my painting to make sure I'm getting the fur all in the right places. It's easy to get lost. And notice how I'm using my brush with a kind of a different, kind of patting my brush onto the paper right here. And depending on how you use your brush too and how you make your strokes, it's not always just your typical painting like this. You might kind of pat your brush on the paper to get a certain effect sometimes. Now I'm using a kind of a long stroke to bring out some feathers of the fur here. It all depends on what effect you want to get. Of course, I want to get that furry look, so I'm kind of using a faster motion here to kind of get that feel in my brush strokes. Kind of using a light hand and trying to make some long, furry brush strokes. Go back in here and darken these. Lamp black tends to dry really a lot lighter than what you put it down, so you might have to go in, do several layers, and build up the richness and the darkness of your blacks with this lamp black. Usually the first, especially in very dark areas, the first few washes aren't going to do it unless you put down your paint really, really thick. Getting some little furry details in here. I'm going to add more water to my brush because the nose is kind of a smooth area, so I'm going to just put in my first, this is kind of my first wash in the nose area. Okay. I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue. Because if you look at the original picture, and I posted the original picture on my blog, there is some blue highlights through here. And again, like I've said before, you don't want to keep any area too flat in one color. You usually want to at least make sure you're getting 2 or 3 colors in there. And then again, you don't want to overdo it either. Just kind of have to develop a feel for that as you develop as an artist, and what's too much and what's not enough, and over time you'll get better and better at that. Okay, I'm going to let these areas dry and then we can start on the eyes and add a little bit more detail.